Indonesia is the largest economy in Southeast Asia with a GDP, the gross domestic product, or simply put, the scorecard over a country's health of over $1 trillion. But as with many countries, it has economic challenges, such as providing jobs for the population, growing expectations of rising living standards, and balancing economic growth with environmental demands. In a wide-ranging chat, I caught up with Indonesian businessman and philanthropist Anindya Bakrie, who is the CEO of Bakrie and Brothers.
I think Indonesia is very blessed. Post-COVID, we maintained inflation about 4%, and the growth is about 5%, even in the last 30 years. So Indonesia is one of the countries that maintain stability, certainly peace, and also growth at the same time in terms of economy. And for example, let me just give you some data. The debt to GDP is about 40%, which is much less compared to the G20 countries. And by the way, Indonesia is so proud to be the only country in Southeast Asia as a part of G20. And also the economic growth is prospering, and we have 285 million people that need to be taken care living in Indonesia. Having said that, we are mindful that the GDP per capita in Indonesia is still $4,000. So we have a lot of things to focus on, such as inclusion, equality, and making sure that the third largest democratic country in the world can prosper together.
You mentioned that the GDP, which at the moment I believe is over $1 trillion. That's
Yes.
quite a staggering amount of
Yeah.
money. How did Indonesia grow its economy to this level?
So I think Indonesia focused on a few things. Number one, financial discipline. We mentioned about the amount of debt that we take and the amount of measures from the central government, from provincial government to make sure that we provide liquidity, but at the same time, we want to make sure we focus on the right sectors of growth, right? And also, when we look at Indonesia, it is a country in Southeast Asia that has 65% of the economy. So trade is very important. And investment is also very important for Indonesia. We need a lot of money coming in. That's why rules of law is very important to uphold in Indonesia. And this is one of the things that help to move the needle so we can almost triple the GDP in the last 1 decade or so.
Let's talk about a new project which has been underway for some years now, the Nusantara Sustainability Hub, which I believe the Bakrie Group is a part of. If you may briefly explain to our listeners, what is that?
Yeah, first of all, Indonesia, again, is proud to have, I would say, possibilities in helping the world in decarbonization. Because we say that, look, around us, we have all the biodiversity, such as the forests, peatland, mangroves, but below the ground we have a lot of critical minerals such as nickel, copper that can be processed for electrification, for example, and also above the ground just renewable energy potential such as solar, wind, geothermal, and what have you. But all of that is nice and good unless you have a nice human resource to support it. You have knowledge base to do it. So Nusantara Sustainability Hub is essentially a hub in our new capital in Borneo to combine the best academic institutions with government institution, in this case Indonesia, and also private sector such as ourselves. We partner with a lot of people, and we think that Indonesia should be the mecca of decarbonization. So that's just one of our initiatives to support that belief.
And how are you going about that decarbonization idea or the plans?
So number one, Indonesia is focused on electrification because we have the raw materials below the ground. But the second thing also, Indonesia is taking a very proactive role in this decarbonization with renewable energy because we can and we have the resources to do it. And also, if you think about carbon capture with the forests and then the blue carbon ecosystems such as peatland and mangroves, we can actually storage a lot of the CO2 for the world. And this is something that we're, again, proud of, despite that our CO2 emission per person per year is well below average of the world. We're doing about 2 tons per person per year as opposed to average 4, and then developing country can be 10 to 20. But we think this is one of the way that Indonesia can shine in the future. We have this Indonesia reaching golden era by 2045, 100 years anniversary of the independence. So we think that's how Indonesia will be known as the mecca of decarbonization.
But at the same time, where now the new capital, as you mentioned, Nusantara, is being built, there have been some critics, especially from indigenous populations around, who feel and say that their land, the water is being destroyed because of this building. What is your response to that?
I think we have a lot of opportunities to have the first green and smart capital in the world, but we also have to be responsible with the way we transition. And we believe as a country this is the right thing to do, and we have to manage the ESG aspect of it. Certainly the environmental aspect, you mentioned about the indigenous people, the social aspect, and of course governance. We want to have a good transparency how we do about the process, because essentially this can be a green capital not only for Indonesia but also the world. It's very rare we see a capital that is being done in the middle, pretty much of a forest. But we think with technology, this type of vision can be materialized. And Indonesia, being the fourth most populated country in the world, and also now number 15 and the largest economy, trying to be top 5 in the next 20 years, I think this type of vision is trying to combine between growth, planet, and also people. Because most of the growth before Victoria is happening in Java Island. So to move it to Borneo Island is something that I think we can focus also on equality that I mentioned before.
The ESG you mentioned there, if I may just explain to our listeners, is environmental and social and governance. Now, on a lighter note, you do love your sport. You are co-owner of Oxford United, which is a team here in England, but you're also involved with the Indonesian Olympic team. Obviously, the Olympics are just only a few weeks away. You are the chef de mission. What is it about sport and what it does for a country or for people that attracts you to this?
I believe sports is, of course, healthy and also can be a healthy relationship between people to people. You mentioned about Oxford United. It is a showing that when two countries work together, in this case Indonesian with Vietnamese and Thailand investors as well, and the UK work together, we can bring a club in League One to Championship League after 25 years in waiting, and we hope to do well. And also for the Olympics, it is quote-unquote the holy grail of sports. It also means that it brings a lot of people together around the world. And the world needs this more than ever, with a lot of geopolitical tensions between the West and China, and in the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and tension also now in East Asia. I think trying to put together all these people with 10,000 athletes qualified from close to 200 nations, I think it's going to be a beautiful thing happening in July. And for me to be chef de mission from Indonesia, and hopefully with 29 athletes trying to win more golds than before, I think it is something that we take very seriously and with enthusiasm.
If I may just lastly ask you, what is the one sport or genre from the Indonesian team you're looking most forward to? And hopefully you'll win more golds, as you say.
Thank you, Victoria. Number 1, badminton. And number 2, speed climbing. It is the first ever competed sports in the Olympics. And of course, we want our weightlifting also to do well. But again, these are 3 out of 12 sports that we compete with. But those 3 are the ones with most potential.
Anindya Bakrie, CEO of Bakrie and Brothers, an Indonesian businessman and philanthropist there.